Hey YouTube, in this video I'm going to be doing a deck profile of a new Kagero deck that I built recently. So this is my newest one. It features a lot of the new generation cards. You can tell just by looking at the Vanguard. It's going to be stride focused. So my take on stride focus decks are the following. You need to run stride fodder. You need to run almost at like max copy or at least 2 copies, depending on what the grade 1 lineup has to be, for the deck to be fast. And it needs to focus on stride, getting to GB2 as fast as possible, just so your Vanguard can keep up with Legion, because Legion overall, in my opinion, has the advantage because of the ability to recycle triggers. That's just a really good ability. It changes the probability of checking into triggers in late game a lot, so that's the reason why Legion's really good. So anyway, for Dragonic Blademaster, this guy is a really fun new card they got. His GB2 skill is pretty good late game, with just annoying pressure of the plus 5k and plus 1 critical, as long as you have a bigger field than your opponent, which is, except for the time when you're up against like Royals and Gold Paladins and occasionally Shadow Paladin, it'll be tough to maintain that, or even Neo Nectar. They tend to have big fields also. But usually anyone else, I mean, it's easy to retire a bunch of their stuff and then maintain a slightly higher rearguard count than them, so his effect in late game is pretty good. But his on-stride skill is pretty generic. You'd expect as a Kagero thing. You'd probably guess what it is. It's when you stride over him, you can counterblast 1 and then choose one of your opponent's rearguards, retire it. So pretty good new unit overall. I like him a lot. Dragonic Blademaster, he's a whole lot of fun. And my backup grade 3, I was actually testing out a bunch of different grade 3s. I even tried a Dragon Monk Goku in here with like 3 Goku and then like 2 of this guy, Dragonic Overlord. But ultimately I decided Goku wasn't needed just because he's a 10k Vanguard. But he was a pretty hilarious card in here. And you'll see why with the rest of the lineup. But anyway, I ultimately went with 4 of the original Dragonic Overlord. People are probably like, whoa, that's a weird choice. It is, and the nice thing about him is he's not limit break, so you don't have any slowdown issues if you have to ride him. Technically, he's a restanding Vanguard. He's the very first restanding Vanguard, with the exception of the Nova Grappler, Mr. Invincible. But this is a lot more easier to do. It's just Counterblast 3. It's a Vanguard and a rearguard effect, so technically you can treat him as a Tile Assault unit for Kagero. So he's actually a very he's a very unique card that has a lot of utility, and I think he's overlooked a lot, mainly because of his hefty Counterblast 3 cost. But we have taken that into account, and the deck is built to handle the Counterblast issues. So he can Counterblast 3, and keep in mind it's Vanguard or Rearguard, so he's a restanding Vanguard or a restanding Rearguard, so he's like a Tile Assault or a Tetra Drive. And then he gains 5,000 power until the end of the turn, and when he loses Twin Drive, which is basically why no one runs him anymore. But as a restanding Rearguard, he's still pretty good. So when he attacks a Rearguard, if it hit, he can restand. So you can attack a Rearguard, they don't block it, it dies, he restands. You attack another Rearguard, they don't block it, for some reason, he stands. Then he can attack Vanguard. So he's pretty good. As a Vanguard, he can technically, theoretically, get 3 drive checks if they let their Rearguards die, but most people won't let that happen. He's really good at punishing decks that run the new G Perfect Guards, so I'll just leave it at that. But he's a pretty fun card to use. Otherwise, just use him as stride fodder. But yeah, technically, you do want to be on this guy as the main Vanguard. But I just thought the backup one didn't really matter too much. I just wanted to give this deck restand capabilities in any form, Rearguard or Vanguard, so that's why I went with a Dragonic Overlord. Next, for Twilight Arrow Dragon, I recommend, if you guys have a good easy way of getting this card, get him. The price on this is going to start going up because this card's actually pretty good. I don't know why no one's really jumped on the bandwagon with this guy, but Twilight Arrow Dragon, he's the Kagero generic GB1 of when he's boosted, when he attacks at a Vanguard, you can Counterblast 1, retire a grade 2 or lower. So he's the new Berserk Dragon, or he's the Berserk Dragon for this deck. So run 4 copies of him because he's amazing. Next, to counteract the issues with Counterblast, because he counterblasts On-Stride Counterblast, Dragonic Overlord Counterblast, like so much Counterblast. We run 4 copies of Bellicosity, so that you always have an annoying poke that they normally don't like having to guard, but they will. Otherwise, you get to unflip. So, and then the big surprise card for this deck, I am running, instead of the 10k Vanilla, which I see a lot of people running, or the 12k GB1 Attacker to the Vanguard, I am actually running a surprise card no one probably thought I would be running. 3 Dragon Knight Nishat. Nishat is really good in here. He is the main of Libra clone, or the Mika clone. For Kagero, he came out with Novell in the extra booster last year. And he's basically, when his attack hits, it's a Vanguard or Rear Guard effect. So you can turn 2 ride him if you have 2 damage for some reason because they hit a critical and you didn't guard. You can pressure them because you can swing at the Vanguard. If it hits, you can counterblast 2, draw a card. Or you can swing into a Rear Guard, counterblast 2, draw a card. And it works as a Rear Guard or Vanguard. So pretty good alternate grade 2 choice that I feel is pretty good in here because Kagero, technically slow, they don't have a whole lot of draw power. So that he kind of helps fix that, but again, hefty costs. You need Bellicosities because of that, and you also need this card. So for Protect Orb Dragon, this along with Bellicosity, along with another card that we're running, is basically how you manage the hefty counterblasts of your grade 2s and grade 3s. So Protect Orb's the new one. Everyone knows what it does by now. It when you have another copy in the drop zone, when you're perfect guarding, you can unflip a damage, so he countercharges. So really important in here because the deck is super counterblast heavy. Originally, I wasn't running as many hefty counterblast stuff like this and Dragonic Overlord, but I changed it, so he's needed. And then because it's stride focused, I run 4 Lava Flow Dragon. He's really good at searching out Dragonic Blademaster, so you don't have to ride Dragonic Overlord. And he's stride fodder, so very self-explanatory. It's a stride focused deck. Next, 3 Energy Flame Athonic or something. This guy is basically another way to manage counterblast. So when something, if he's a rear guard, something, you retire something on the opponent's field, it goes to the drop zone due to one of your card's effects. You can put him in the soul and unflip 2. So unflip 2, he can essentially pay for his cost that way later on, or he can discount the restand cost of Dragonic Overlord. So, but you are going minus by getting rid of him, so keep that in mind. That's why I do kind of counteract it with stuff like this. But remember, the opponent's also losing cards because his effect will only trigger when you're making the opponent go minus. So you're essentially making the opponent break even, but you're setting up your deck so that you can do more gambit cost stuff like drawing cards or retiring units. So 3 of him, and then 3 Dragon Monk Gyokuryu. This guy is basically the random tech choice in here. I mean, he's a new unit that came out. All of these guys are the rares, so I figured I'd just run all of them in the same deck. And it seems to work good. He's GB1. When the opponent's rear guard's put in the drop zone due to an effect, he gets 5k, so he becomes an 11k boost. Or 11k attacker. But usually you'll almost always use him as a booster. So him with Bellicosity makes 20 to the Vanguard, forcing him to drop 10 instead of 5. Otherwise they'll be dropping 5 because this will only be 15. So it's a little bit kind of inconsistent, but it's in there nonetheless, mainly because you can still form annoying columns like this, for example. This is the Libra clone, so basically when Nishat is boosted by this guy, if it's only 15, you swing 15 to a 9k rear guard, they're gonna be forced to throw 10, and they're not gonna like having to do that. Otherwise, you'll counterblast 2 and draw, and they'll lose their rear guard, so you'll just +2 off of them otherwise. So otherwise, he'll be 19. Yeah. Actually, no, he'll be 20. He'll be 20 to a rear guard. So it's still pretty good. But it's GB1, so it's a little slow, a little inconsistent, like I said. But it's still overall a better card than running the Calamity Towers. Calamity Tower is not needed in here because of this guy at 3 copies, so yeah. But the deck does surprisingly build a bunch of soul because of this, so Calamity Tower could technically be thrown in here. If you wanted to run Calamity Tower, I recommend running 4 of this and 2 Calamity Tower Wyvern. So everything else should stay the same though. For the zeros, starts out simple. It's like the 4 Gatling Claw Dragon, just to get rid of people's starters and stuff. Otherwise, you can run the Margle Clone, the Seal Dragon draw. It's fine. But here's the surprise. So I am actually running 2 Lizard Soldier Vera. So he's the new stand trigger for Kagero. He has a GB1 skill, and it's actually a pretty good skill. The only reason why I'm running him in here is because I threw in Dragonic Overlord. So basically, on the main phase, you throw him on the field, just one of him. Like all the other GB effect triggers, he will recycle himself back into the deck at the end, so you get to use him again later on. So that's why I'm only running 2 stands, and basically what he does is when the opponent's rear guard is put in the drop zone due to an effect of one of your cards, you could choose one of your other units. So it can be Vanguard, it can be rear guard, doesn't matter. And that unit gets 10,000 power until the end of the turn. If you do, he goes to the top of the deck, or he goes back into the deck and shuffle the deck. So that with this guy makes this guy, what, 21? You activate Counterblast 3, he goes up to 26 with no boost. So he's 26 with no boost. You can attack a rear guard with 26. What are they going to do? Yeah. Really, really interesting plays. That's why I like it. I like this deck because Kagero right now is very cookie cutter. Like, everyone's running Overlord or Perdition, and it's just very boring. So I just kind of thought that it would be interesting to change up the deck like this. And then I am running just 6 of the new critical triggers, just to showcase them here. So they got the new criticals and the new stand. They did get a new new draw. It's a Dragon Dancer, but I'm not running her because she has no effect. What I recommend Bushiroad should do is they should just start printing new artwork triggers that have effects of old cards like this, or Margle Clone, or Flame of Victory Clone, or stuff like that. So otherwise people will never really use them. They'll just kind of like stick with these old cards. But anyway, 6 critical, 2 stand. So the 2 stand doesn't hurt the critical count too much. A lot of people that play Kagero run 6 critical, 6 draw. I don't need the 6 draw because I've got this guy. So I've got the regular draw count accounted for, and then the 2 stands don't really hurt the critical count too much because it's a defensive style deck anyway. So yeah, I think the stand effect is actually pretty interesting. So I'm testing out like that at 2. Then 4, Mother Orb Dragon is the new heal for the Generation era. But the heal doesn't really matter too much. And then I am running Dragon Knight Sade because he is just overall a really good one. He doesn't use any counterblast, and the deck is super counterblast heavy. So for the strides, it should be 4 Root Flare, but I only have 2. But it'll probably change in the future because I get new cards. So right now it's 2 Root Flare, 2 Mustafa, 2 of the Fighters Collection Divine Dragon Knight Zom, and 2 Mahmud. The interesting thing about this deck, because it uses Dragonic Overlord at 4 copies, you could technically tech the Ace in here at 2 copies, so you could use it once, but it's not necessary. But yeah, the Ace could actually technically be running here because I am running Overlord. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. I think this is a pretty unique Kagero deck. There's probably no other one out there running it right now. At least one that combines the old Dragonic Overlord with the new Dragonic Blademaster. But anyway, guys, let me know in the comments what you think of this deck, and any suggestions on what you would change in terms of the Grade 1, Grade 2, Grade 3 lineup, or even the trigger lineup. And as always, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for more Cardfight Vanguard reviews in the future, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.